Sony has officially launched the most compact version of its well-received premium line of soundbars, the HT-A3000. And despite its size and price point, it is still expandable, being able to add the SW3 or SW5 subwoofers and the RS5 or RS3 Surrounds for complete 360-degree immersion. So if the big boys like the A7000 or A5000 were a bit too pricey or just literally too big for your home theater space, well, with a price tag of $699, like Goldilocks, the A3000 could be just right. Hello and welcome, fam. My name is Elon Osborne and I like to talk about movies, audio, and music. And today I'm going to let you know my thoughts on the small but mighty HT-A3000 from Sony, who were kind enough to send me the bar itself, the more compact RS3 Surrounds, as well as the SW3 subwoofer. So let's first start by answering the question, what's in the box? Inside there. Wow, that's thick! Quick startup guide. Remote, power cable, stereo auxiliary cable, HDMI, batteries for the remote. Cool. Got some little rubber feet down here. Mesh aluminum cover. Nice and sturdy, yeah. And just like on the subwoofer, it's got like this kind of plastic, almost hard rubber looking thing on the back here. It's very solid. Here's all your ports. Pretty cool. Two power cords, literature, kind of the same aesthetic as the soundbar. You've got your aluminum mesh covering here, covering the drivers. And then on the rear you've got your kind of hard plastic made to look like rubber. Very solid, not too heavy. You could be mounted. Power button and your link button. That's where the power cable goes. Yeah. Same on both. Very nice, very solid. Power cord, some literature. Cool. Sony. It's plastic, but it's got like this kind of almost rubber look to it. It's actually kind of cool. There's some cloth here. There's the port, power button, link button. That's where the power cable goes. Very well built.
Specs.
The bar itself comes in at 37.5 inches wide, 2 5/8 inches tall, and 5 1/8 inches deep, and weighs 9.9 pounds. So it is the smallest in Sony's premium line, but that's still pretty big compared to, say, the Sonos Beam, which is 12 inches shorter. So it's pretty big for being small-er. It is considered a 3.1 soundbar due to having a left, center, and right speaker, with two subwoofers flanking that center speaker. Although you may have noticed there are no physical drivers on top for Dolby Atmos or DTS:X height effects, so all of that is done virtually. All speakers are engineered to be X-balanced, which is why they are more elongated, allowing the soundbar to not be as tall as some competitors, fitting more easily underneath a TV. The rear is very minimal with an HDMI out port, optical, USB, and 3.5mm jack to connect to a Sony Bravia TV to utilize its acoustic center sync feature, using the TV as a center channel for enhanced dialogue clarity and centered imaging. Just FYI, I do not own a Sony Bravia TV, so I couldn't actually test out that feature. It supports both Dolby Atmos and DTS:X codecs for superior sound while streaming Netflix or Disney+, but especially if you enjoy watching 4K Blu-rays through your TV or like to play popular gaming titles with Atmos soundtracks on your Xbox Series X. But the coolest feature, I think, is that it features the very same 360 spatial sound mapping tech that you'll find in the flagship HT-A9 system. The only caveat though is that it's only available if you have either the RS5 or RS3 Surrounds as well. But with that comes the ability to listen to 360 reality audio tracks on Amazon Music or Tidal. More on that later. The bar itself does come equipped with its own proprietary vertical surround engine, S-Force Pro front surround, and DSEE Extreme, which take surround sound, Atmos, and DTS:X soundtracks and virtually expands them. It has Chromecast built in, works with Amazon Alexa or Google Assistant, supports Apple AirPlay 2, as well as Bluetooth 5.0 and LDAC for superior audio quality when streaming music. That little remote you saw in the unboxing does allow you to easily switch between inputs and even lets you independently adjust the main volume, surround volume, and subwoofer volume to your liking, if you have all three of those components connected. And speaking of connections,
Setup.
other than establishing a Wi-Fi connection with the easy setup feature, there's not much else you need to do when it's just the bar alone. Really simple, and it worked flawlessly without any hitches along the way. All I had to do was plug in the provided HDMI cable to the input labeled ARC on my TV, plug the power cable into the outlet, and boom, ready for business. But after I tested the bar on its own, I plugged in the RS3 Surrounds and that was it. They just work. Although, just a heads up, they are labeled on the bottom where they need to be placed. When I initially ran the 360 spatial sound mapping, it told me they were switched. So that was nice of Sony to let me know I wasn't observant enough to realize they needed to be placed in specific spots.
50-50 chance, and of course I blew it.
But when I decided to finally add the subwoofer to the mix, oh geez, what a nightmare. I didn't have to do anything. I just plugged it into power, fired up the TV, and it just worked. What? Come on, let me at least troubleshoot something and waste precious hours trying to sync all these components together, right? Yeah. Once again, it just worked flawlessly. And I was very surprised with how fast the sound mapping calibration step was. Within 20 seconds, it had played the tones and calculated all the angles or whatever, and boom, done. Then it asks if you want to listen to a demo. Please and thank you.
Side note.
You may have noticed that I mentioned this soundbar supports not only Dolby Atmos but also DTS:X. But here's the kicker. Since this soundbar has no HDMI input, meaning you can't directly connect a 4K Blu-ray player or Xbox to it, the only way you can get a DTS:X signal through the soundbar is if you connect your 4K Blu-ray player directly to your TV, and then it goes through the soundbar via eARC. So if you have a TV that only supports ARC, say it's maybe a TV from 2017 or older, all you're gonna get is DTS or Dolby Surround. They still sound good, but you're not using the soundbar system to its fullest potential. Although you still get Dolby Atmos audio if your TV supports Atmos and eARC, since every major TV show or streaming movie nowadays will be mixed in Atmos. Makes sense? DTS:X still doesn't have a streaming counterpart. Yet. Supposedly Disney Plus is in the works behind this after they started supporting IMAX enhanced picture quality, but of course, audio always plays second fiddle when it comes to technological advancements. So in summary, you need a 4K Blu-ray player or Xbox connected to your TV, which has to support eARC to be able to pass through DTS:X audio to the A3000. And since streaming doesn't support DTS:X yet, you'll only be able to experience DTS:X tracks from physical media. That's why I watched Bad Boys for Life and Jumanji: The Next Level through my 4K Blu-ray player. Thank you for joining me on this side note. How do they sound? When you've got the soundbar just by itself hooked up, it's okay. As I mentioned earlier, you can't run the spatial audio mapping calibration with the soundbar alone. Yes, it does have virtual enhancements built in to make it sound larger than the bar itself, sending audio to the sides, making it seem like audio is coming from the TV rather than just below it. But obviously, to get a real surround effect, you'll need surround speakers. But before I move on, I would like to mention that with the soundbar alone, it does sound like a soundbar. Sometimes there's comb filtering going on with car crashes or other instances of metal getting twisted or smashed, like in the middle of the ostrich chase scene in Jumanji: The Next Level, sounding just slightly like it's in a cave. That and this button here that says sound field, it broadens the scale of the audio coming out, but it also made the dialogue a little less intelligible. I actually liked it better when the sound field was turned off. But streaming music sounds excellent, since that's from a stereo source. I would still say that the Sonos Beam has a slight edge on the A3000 when it comes to streaming music, but both still sounded great. Dialogue in movies sounded pretty darn good, but again, I think dialogue through my Sonos Beam sounds just a little bit better and a little more sharp and clear. There were moments where I needed to turn up the volume of the A3000 to hear dialogue to my liking. So let's move on to having surrounds in the system. This is where the A3000 starts to shine, because now I can run spatial sound mapping and things start to open up, details start to come alive, etc. I'm still blown away by how quickly this spatial sound mapping does its thing, compared to the awkward TruePlay calibration from Sonos, walking around making circles with my phone like some kind of lunatic. But once spatial sound mapping is complete, the grand scale of audio coming from the bar and the surrounds is next level. My wife just happened to come home as I was watching Bad Boys for Life, and even she could immediately tell the difference between this and the Sonos Beam. She said it sounded a lot more open and just on a larger scale than the Sonos, filling our little temporary living room much better. So if she can notice the difference, Sony must be doing something right, right?
Am I right or am I right or am I right? Right.
And this time around, with spatial mapping done, the sound field button made the experience better. I actually preferred to have it on now, as opposed to preferring the sound field feature off when it was just the bar. And again, I know I sound like a broken record, but since I have one on hand for easy comparison, I think the Sonos Beam has better bass extension, most likely due to its 3 passive radiators. So, sounds like a good time to talk about the SW3 subwoofer. Well, if you plan on getting any kind of cinematic experience from the likes of a soundbar, obviously I highly recommend a subwoofer. Is the SW3 the greatest sub? No. It leaves something left to be desired when it comes to just sheer impact in the chest and low frequency articulation. But as far as adding dimension to the system overall, yes, you need the SW3 if you're wanting some low cinematic rumblings to fill your listening area. But don't forget, this is also compatible with the SW5. Yes, it's more money, but it's worth it if you can swing it. Now, I haven't heard the SW5 in person, but Andrew Robinson did sing his praises about it when he reviewed it with the flagship HT-A9 system. And remember how I said there's a workaround for the Atmos virtualization? Well, the RS5 Surrounds happen to have upward firing Atmos speakers built on top. So paired with the SW3 or SW5 and the A3000, you can technically get a 5.1.2 Atmos system with the surrounds firing audio towards the ceiling. Something to consider for sure. So what about music? It actually sounds really good, I must say. Compared to the Sonos Beam, the A3000 does sound slightly processed with some of the vocals, a little too digital for my taste at times, but it's still very fun to listen to music, especially with the surrounds and sub. A very full sound that way. I really enjoyed it. But Sony does have this fairly new thing called 360 Reality Audio, which is Sony's answer to Apple's spatial audio or Atmos music. You can listen to 360 Reality Audio tracks if you have a Hi-Fi Plus account with Tidal, or if you're subscribed to Amazon Music Unlimited. I just happen to have Amazon Music Unlimited, so I searched for a 360 Reality Audio playlist because I was very curious to see how it sounds with this soundbar system.
Oh boy, it's not that great.
Kind of like most Atmos tracks on Apple Music. I know it's relatively new and kinks are still being worked out, but being able to quickly switch back and forth between 360 audio and good old stereo gave me a good sense of how different and strange 360 Reality Audio sounded. The vocals just seemed farther away, the drum kit lost its punch, and the arrangements seemed more open, but not really in a good way, like the musicians were standing too far apart from each other. But what blew me away is how good it sounded in stereo even with the surrounds. Sometimes it can be a little off-putting to hear multi-channel audio that's been mixed in stereo, but Sony's engineers did something spectacular because stereo tracks sounded awesome when I was sitting on my couch, being enveloped by the music. The vocals were front and center again, in my face and not distant sounding, and the drums were alive and punchy once again. So if you want an excellent multi-channel surround sound music experience, just listen to the stereo tracks with this system and you'll be on a fantastic ride. Now, of course, I'd love to hear 360 Reality Audio at a Sony booth at an audio expo, or the actual mastering studio it was mixed in, since I'm sure it sounds amazing in that setting. But at least what's available to normal consumers, 360 Reality Audio is still missing the mark. I would much rather listen to its stereo counterpart even with surround speakers. But who knows? Maybe it's better on Tidal?
Recap.
So who is this for anyway? Well, if you're wanting to have a system for a master bedroom, a small to moderately sized living room, a dorm room, an apartment, the A3000 does sound larger than you would think. Again, just ask my wife, especially with the surrounds. If you live in a dorm room or an apartment and don't want to piss off your neighbors, I would highly recommend the A3000 paired with the RS3S or RS5 Surrounds. Unlocking the 360 spatial audio mapping feature is worth the price of admission, which happens to be $9.99 or $12.99 depending. That way you get pretty decent low end that doesn't bother those around you, while getting a fantastic bubble of immersive audio while you watch TV, movies, play video games, or listen to music. If you can get away with some bass where you live though, I do still recommend getting the entire package, soundbar, surrounds, and subwoofer, since it just makes the experience much more rounded. But the overall best combination for a moderately sized room is to go for the A3000, SW5 Sub, and RS5 Surrounds. I do appreciate that Sony didn't pull an Apple move and only make the smaller RS3S and SW3 compatible with the A3000, just because, you know? Because I bet there are some of you out there who are hesitant on getting the A5000 or A7000 paired with the SW5 and RS5 because of the final price tag being way above $2,000. But owning the bigger sub, bigger surrounds, and A3000 with a final price tag of $1899, that might be just what you were waiting for.
And there you have it.
Thank you so much for joining me on this review of the HT-A3000 soundbar system from Sony. Have you been waiting for a smaller version to be released? Is this perfect for your space? Let's start a conversation, people. As always, please be kind to each other out there. Don't just watch TV and movies, experience them. And of course, always be listening.